Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. I know we've featured a couple of airship escort battles in the previous couple of weeks, but never from this perspective. This time, we're getting up close and personal with the airship itself. This is Asian Death God in the Soviet Tier 10 extremely heavy cruiser, the Sevastopol. And when I say extremely heavy cruiser, I'm not joking. If you have a look at the turrets, they look a bit German, don't they? It's because they are. This was the sister ship of the Kronstadt and was supposed to have been outfitted with Bismarck 380mm gun turrets, 15-inch guns. Biggest guns than any cruiser in the game, along with the Siegfried. And when I say cruiser, I don't mean battle cruisers. I mean, things that actually count as cruisers as far as the matchmaker is concerned. The Soviet Union signed a contract with Germany to have these Bismarck gun turrets fitted to the Sevastopol in 1943, 2 years after Germany invaded. I think a certain Austrian corporal, whose name I can't mention or this video will get demonetized because YouTube has absolutely no sense of humour when it comes to history, probably had his fingers crossed when he was signing that contract. Unsurprisingly, the ship was never completed, but if it had been completed, these are the guns that it would have been fitted with. The inclusion of these guns means that the Sevastopol, along with the Siegfried, is the cruiser with the biggest guns in the game. Again, cruiser, not battle cruiser. However, she does only have 6 of them, and the reload isn't fantastic. I mean, it's not bad. Most battleships armed with 15-inch guns have a 30-second reload. The Sevastopol has 25 seconds, but it does mean that her damage per minute is actually kind of bad. I mean, when these guns hit, and they do hit quite often, they get cruiser rather than battle cruiser or battleship accuracy. They hit hard. They just don't hit particularly often. I think somebody ran the calculations and figured out that the Sevastopol, while it does have huge alpha damage, actually has the lowest damage per minute of any Tier 10 cruiser. But she is, of course, still just a cruiser. Despite the battleship guns, she very definitely has cruiser armour with 25mm bows and 30mm deck, which isn't terrible. But this ship, even more so than other glass cannons like the Schlieffen, this ship absolutely cannot stand up to a sustained beating. Which is what makes today's performance from Asian Death God here all the more remarkable, because he is going to be in the thick of the action pretty much permanently. Oh lordy, that's a lot of torpedoes. But he's dodged them, and oh, here comes some more. Spotted by the friendly gearing. Yeah. There's no way he's dodging all of those. The Sevastopol does have a large health pool. And he's going to need it. Man, look at this crossfire. You might want to get out of there, mate. Much like Admiral Akbar at the Battle of Endor, Asian Death God is discovering that your cruisers cannot repel firepower of that magnitude. Okay. I mean, he's doing his best to escort this airship because somebody has to. But that is just like, nope. Somebody else can take over. Yeah, I mean, the Sevastopol's actually fairly sneaky, given the size of the ship. And it does have a large health pool, and it can heal a lot of damage back, but it has a special damage repair party with a limited number of charges and a very, very long cooldown. Also, fires on this thing burn for the full 60 seconds, just like on battleships, and floods on this thing deal twice as much damage as normal. The ship really does pay a fairly heavy price for having that battleship firepower. Oh, they've just lost their Preußen, so first blood to the enemy team. However, remember, this is an airship escort battle, and kills don't really matter that much. I mean, they do, because if you wipe out the entire enemy team, you win. But it's not about killing the enemy team, it's about escorting the airship. And at the moment, both of the airships are neck and neck. This is not like the previous airship escort battle that I featured, where the enemy team forgot that they had an airship that needed escorting. and basically threw the match within minutes of the start, where you could clearly see that they were going to lose unless they killed the entire friendly team, which they almost did, but I mean, almost is really just a fancy way of saying didn't. So that's absolutely not happening here. Looks like the enemy Schlieffen's in trouble, and then more torpedoes spotted, which means Asian Death God has to turn to avoid them, and that does mean giving broadside to the Schlieffen, although he was at least slightly angled at the point where the Schlieffen unloaded on him. He's just eaten another torpedo. That could have been very dangerous. Fortunately, the Schlieffen fired just a little bit early. If it had held its shots for another 2 seconds, it might have citadeled him. The team are down 2 casualties now. They've lost their submarine. And while things have been fairly frantic up till now, and he is still managing to stay within the escort bubble of that airship, up until now, the 2 airships have been 10 kilometers apart. We are now approaching the point where their paths are about to converge, which means if you want to continue escorting the airship, regardless of which team you're on, things are about to get even more up close and personal. There's the enemy Moskva, Asian Death God chilling out here behind the island. Oh, there's the Schlieffen. Cannot afford to let a ship as dangerous as that get away with it. Other people are switching to him, of course, now he's been respotted, and there's some high explosive going in. Asian Death God unloads 15-inch armor piercing. Surely this is going to be a kill. Nope. Come on. Seriously, less than 1,000 health. No, he's gone down. The Napoli finished him. Alright. Now, the friendly Gdansk has deployed smoke, but that's a lot of enemy ships. And of course, with battleship caliber guns at this kind of range, smoke screen or not, the second you fire, they are all going to see you. The temptation here to shoot at the Napoli must have been overwhelming. And yet, he holds his fire. Because let's face it, when you've got this much health remaining, if you're going to take the shot, you want to be sure that you're going to get results. He waits for the Napoli to give a nice big flat broadside. Then he squeezes the trigger. And he is... I mean, I can't describe that in any other way than to say he was robbed of a kill. That, I mean, all 4 hit, but no citadels, and now he's got a whole bunch of very angry ships in front of him. Surviving that broadside, what should have been a paddling, however, appears to have given the Napoli a severe case of overconfidence. There's the, well, that's what we call a pitadel, a pity citadel. When a simple overpenetration would have been enough to kill the target, that's when you suddenly start scoring citadels. It looks as if Asian Death God was going to get a broadside shot at the Moskva, but then the Moskva starts nosing in, so he raises the sights because he's never going to penetrate the icebreaker bow. The friendly airship has now been slowed down to 6 knots, while the enemy airship is steaming ahead at 30. Asian Death God desperately trying to get a heel off, and then a couple of things happen at once. First, when he was at 5,500 hit points, his special commander skill triggered when the ship was at 10% hit points, and activated a bonus heal, which is probably the only thing that kept him alive there. He also got an actual citadel on and finished off the Moskva. And with the Moskva down, the friendly airship has sped up from 6 to 12 knots. It's still going 6 knots slower than the enemy airship, however. With this few hit points remaining, and only 1 charge of his damage control left, you'd think Asian Death God would be chilling the hell out and letting the rest of the team take up some of the slack. The only problem is the rest of the team are in no position to do that. Look at the minimap. I mean, aside from attempting to torpedo Asian Death God, thanks for that, they're all up to the north chasing after the Kleber. This is almost a mirror image of the previous airship escort battle, where one lone destroyer basically trolled the entire enemy team into abandoning the objective. I mean, you could argue, and you'd be right, that the enemy Zhao and Des Moines, all the way over there to the east, are equally useless to the team alive. But that's not a huge amount of consolation to Asian Death God here, who is basically going to have to go it alone. And he has been spotted, and they're shooting at him, and they all know he's coming, and there are destroyers up ahead. And there's a Colbert around the corner. And oh lordy, there's a Vermont up ahead. And Vermont, of course, is armed with guns of such high caliber that they can citadel a Sevastopol from the front by punching through that bow armour like a hot knife through butter. Fortunately, the Vermont is not paying attention. The Colbert, however, is. Now, luckily, the Colbert is one of the few French cruisers that doesn't actually get torpedoes. But it can still spank your broadside if you give it half the chance. It does only have 127mm guns, but with AP loaded at this range, you give it a shot at the broadside, it will kill you. So, let's not give it a shot at the broadside. Colbert eliminated. The enemy airship has now been slowed down to 12 knots, but it's still in the lead thanks to the speed advantage that it had earlier, and that's when the Halland pops up, and this could be very dangerous. Team, help the brother out. Fortunately, while most of the team are still chasing after the enemy Kleber up to the northwest rather pointlessly and getting themselves killed in the process, the friendly Yu Yang is at least playing the objective and takes care of the Halland, which is a huge relief for Asian Death God. The Vermont still doesn't appear to realise that there's anything pummeling his broadside and scoring citadel after citadel. Asian Death God, of course, entirely happy to take advantage of that. He's now inside the influence circle of the enemy airship. It has now been slowed down to 6 knots, although it's still a couple of kilometres ahead of the... Wow. Did you see that? The Vermont, whose guns were pointing up there, managed to swing those guns all the way around, point them straight at Asian Death God, who'd been scoring multiple 15-inch armour-piercing citadels on him the whole time, and kept the guns turning to point them down there, where there's nothing but his own teammates, without once shooting at Asian Death God. How is... I got nothing. Your guess is as good as mine. Right, okay, well, there goes the submarine. That's the Kraken Unleashed. There are now... I think the nearest enemy ship is the Kleber over there. It's taken this long for the entire team to kill that guy. The enemy Zhao is no use to his team alive all the way up there. That just leaves the Gearing and the Des Moines, who, well, this far at least, haven't been much use alive to their team either, all the way over to the east. The friendly airship is now doing 30 knots. The enemy airship, remember you can't stop the enemy airship. The best you can do is slow it down to 6 knots, but that's exactly what they've done. It is still ahead. I mean, it's almost at the exit point, but with the friendly airship overhauling it at a relative speed advantage of 24 knots, all they basically have to do now... Oh, here's the Gearing. Well, you know, glad you could turn up. Too little, too late. Although, to be fair, his presence has forced a couple of the surviving escorting destroyers to abandon the airship escort momentarily, but it is still doing twice the speed of the enemy airship. The Gearing's gone down. That just leaves the Zhao, who is hopelessly out of position. The two friendly destroyers, who both survived, have now gotten back to escorting and speeding up the friendly airship, which is once again overhauling the enemy airship at 30 knots. The Des Moines, well, I suppose he gets a participation medal, and it doesn't even matter if he kills Asian Death God, because while Asian Death God is slowing down the enemy airship, the friendly airship is now pulled ahead, and it's doing 30 knots. And even if he kills Asian Death God, which he failed to do, the enemy airship would have only sped up to 12 knots, and it would have still lost. Isn't it just incredible what you can achieve when you actually play the objective? I got to admit though, at the start of this battle, watching Asian Death God charge straight into the teeth of the enemy team there to escort that airship, even though he's in a cruiser as powerful as the Sevastopol, it's still just a cruiser. I thought there's no way he's surviving this. And yet he did. Credit where credit's due, he survived largely thanks to some absolutely outstanding destroyer support, particularly from the Yu Yang, but still, I would not put money at the start of this battle on him still being alive at the end. And yet there he is, not only alive, but Kraken Unleashed and nearly 3,000 base experience. That was one hell of a show. I hope you all enjoyed it for two reasons. One, I don't think we're going to be seeing a performance like that again anytime soon. And also, that's it for today. So my heartfelt congratulations there, Asian Death God, on one hell of a show. As always, folks, take care, and I'll catch you next time.